For over 15 years, civilian boats have braved one of the most militarized seas in the world to deliver aid and solidarity to Gaza. These voyages, known as flotillas, have drawn teachers, doctors, journalists, lawmakers, and activists from across continents, all united by one goal: to challenge the blockade that has kept Gaza's people trapped and starving. So what drives people to risk their lives for strangers behind the blockade? Why does the world tolerate the collective punishment of 2 million civilians? And what does it mean when compassion itself has to travel under armed escort? Let's walk through it in today's Star Explains. The sea route to Gaza was long thought impossible to breach. But then in August 2008, 2 small boats, Free Gaza and Liberty, quietly slipped out of Cyprus, carrying food, medicine, and hearing aids. Against all odds, they reached Gaza's port, greeted by cheering crowds. And for the first time since the blockade began, outsiders broke through. The success inspired others. Dignity, spirit of humanity, Aryan, some made landfall, others were rammed or seized by the Israeli Navy. Yet every voyage chipped away at the idea that Gaza was untouchable. Then came May 31st, 2010. 6 ships under the Gaza Freedom Flotilla banner, led by the Turkish-flagged Mavi Marmara, were boarded in international waters. Israeli commandos opened fire, killing 10 activists and injuring dozens of others. The attack provoked global outrage and ruptured relations between Turkey and Israel. The images of that night, civilians bleeding on deck under floodlights, would come to define how the world saw the siege. Even so, the sails kept rising. In 2011, Freedom Flotilla 2, Stay Human, was blocked by Greek authorities before departure. The next year, the Swedish ship Estelle was intercepted about 30 nautical miles from Gaza. In 2015, Marianne A.V. Gottberg was stopped roughly 100 miles out. In 2016, the all-woman Zaituna Oliva was detained and deported. In 2018, Al-Auda and Freedom were both seized within days of each other. Every mission ended the same way: intercepted, detained, deported. Yet none ended the determination to try again. Then, in June 2025, a smaller vessel named Madeleine reignited the effort. Departing from Catania, it carried baby formula, rice, flour, and medical kits for Gaza's hospitals. On board were Greta Thunberg and French member of European Parliament, Rima Hassan. Israeli forces intercepted the ship in international waters on June 9th, towing it to Ashdod. Activists later described the use of chemical irritants, confiscated belongings, and denial of medical care. The Madeleine never reached Gaza, but it reminded the world that even mercy is treated as a threat on these waters. Every flotilla tests not just the blockade, but the conscience of the international community. The UN Human Rights Council and the International Committee of the Red Cross have both described the Gaza closure as collective punishment, a violation of international law under the 4th Geneva Convention. Legal scholars argue that intercepting humanitarian vessels in international waters breaches both the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the San Remo Manual's limits on blockades during armed conflict. The Daily Star's own editorial condemned Israel's seizure of the latest flotilla as a flagrant violation of international law and an affront to human decency. Rights organizations, including Amnesty International and the Committee to Protect Journalists, also condemned the interceptions as clear breaches of international law. Security think tanks called the flotillas symbolic gestures that failed to alter conditions on the ground. But rights groups counter that visibility is the only weapon civilians have. Every intercepted ship draws eyes back to Gaza. Every deported activist carries the story further. The flotillas, they say, are not about arrival. They're about refusal. Refusal to let the siege disappear behind official silence. 15 years after the Mavi Marmara, the sails returned to the horizon. The global Sumud Flotilla, Sumud meaning steadfastness, became the largest civilian convoy ever to attempt the route. More than 40 boats carrying roughly 500 people, lawmakers, doctors, lawyers, journalists, activists from across continents. Between October 1st and 3rd, Israeli naval forces intercepted nearly all of them in international waters, detaining over 400 activists. On October 5th, 137 people were deported to Turkey. Many told reporters they were beaten, strip-searched, denied water and medicine, and humiliated in custody. 2 deported activists alleged Greta Thunberg was shoved and forced to wear the Israeli flag, claims that Israel unsurprisingly dismissed. Another vessel, Marinette, reached within 42.5 nautical miles of Gaza, the closest any flotilla had come since 2009. But that was just before being surrounded and seized. Meanwhile, Shahidul Alam, renowned Bangladeshi photojournalist, remains aboard the press vessel Conscience, part of the media flotilla. While Shahidul and his crew continue to film and report from international waters, transmitting footage and updates despite jamming attempts, the Conscience is still sailing forward, its fate still unknown. Other smaller boats too remain on the Mediterranean, navigating stormy seas and surveillance drones. Each carries a different flag, but the same message. Gaza is not alone. Flotillas rarely deliver cargo. What they deliver is truth. They remind us that the siege of Gaza is not a forgotten policy, but an ongoing genocide. They expose the world's quiet complicity, showing that humanitarianism itself must now sail under the threat of guns. As of tonight, waves still carry fragments of that defiance towards Gaza. The sea remembers every name, every sail, every prayer whispered into the wind. Until Gaza breathes free, flotillas will perhaps keep returning, because every time they set sail, they prove one unyielding truth. The blockade may own the water, but it does not own the will of the people.